you so much for being here. It's wonderful to see all of you, every one of you, and it means a great deal to me that you're taking the time to look, because this work at its heart is about looking, about noticing what's usually beside us, beneath us, or trailing behind us. I'm interested in shadows, not just visually, but philosophically, emotionally, even spiritually. Shadows are part of us that we seldom think about, but that constantly show themselves. They move when we move. They wait when we stop. They stretch, they shrink, disappear, return. In some ways, they remind me of our spirits, quiet companions that follow us through life and may one day take us to the next realm. When I first began making these shadow photographs, I thought it would be an introspective project. I imagined it's something inwards, even meditative, but what surprised me was a community strengthening event. Instead of turning inward, people turned toward one another. People were happy to participate, genuinely happy. They showed curiosity and enthusiasm, and a lot of times with ideas of their own. And I think part of the joy came from the fact that shadows don't judge. They don't care if you had a bad hair day, like I'm having now. And they don't care that you're wearing, or how old you are, or what shape you're in, or how confident you feel that day. A shadow is democratic. It belongs to everyone. And in that space where appearances and expectations fell away, people allowed themselves to play. They became kids again. When you were a child, building sandcastles or painting, you didn't care what others thought about your work. You weren't asking whether it would be framed, praised, sold, or accepted by society. You only wanted to create. You wanted to see what would happen if you did this or you did that. Somewhere along the way, many of us lose that freedom. We start worrying about outcomes, about approval, and whether something is good enough. This project gave people permission, if only for a moment, to let that go. And I'm deeply grateful that I was able to bring that out in people, that they trusted the process and trusted me enough to step into the light and let their shadows speak. When I first got these photographs back from the printer and began arranging the shapes, something else unexpected happened. The shadows became more than shadows. They began to remind me of ancient forms, of Stonehenge, or the statues on Easter Island. There was a sense of timelessness to them, as if these shapes had existed long before us and would continue long after. That's something I love about shadows. They feel temporary, but also eternal. They're always changing, and yet they've always been here. I'm also drawn to the play of light and dark, not just as opposite, but as collaborators. I'm interested in the in-between shades, the graduations that aren't quite one thing or another. Those subtle transitions create patterns that feel alive to me. And some of the shadows, at least to my eye, urge the viewer to look deeper, to linger, to ask questions instead of rushing towards answers. There's another kind of art I do. It started one day when I was walking past someone in the Apple store at Hingham, and they were having photography lessons. I loved the way she was reaching up and the way the instructor was helping her. To me, it looked like she was reaching toward the heavens. It felt inspirational, almost sacred. I snapped the photo, but when I got it back from the printer, it didn't say what I wanted it to say. That's a strange and disappointing moment as an artist, when something felt alive in the moment but arrives flat on paper. There was something missing. I couldn't quite articulate what it was, but I could feel it. So I did something that's become central to my practice. I made copies and I cut them up. I arranged the image, adding pieces back to the original. And then finally it felt complete. Not polished, not perfect, but honest. Later, I went even further, and I began to look at the original image as if it were a shard of white light. And without adding anything from another photograph, I cut it up again and rearranged it. What emerged wasn't a completely different picture, but something transformed, like colors being revealed. Almost like a rainbow hiding inside the image all along. That process taught me something important about how I understand the world. I like to break things apart to really understand the subject. A ray of light can be broken into the colors of the rainbow. If you didn't break it apart, you would only know one color and think what you'd be missing. I think this applies not just to art, but to people, relationships, to experiences. Sometimes we accept the surface version of something because it's easier, faster, or more comfortable. But when we take the time to examine it, to gently dismantle it, we discover complexity, contradiction, and beauty we couldn't see before. I also love photography because of that click. The instant where creativity happens in a nanosecond. It reminds me of ideas themselves. They arrive suddenly, unexpectedly, fully formed, or nearly so. And I've noticed something about my own process. The art I agonize over really pans out. When I overthink, I get in the way. When I trust the instinct, the click, the impulse, the urge to cut or rearrange, that's when the work feels alive. The project taught me to trust that more, to trust play, to trust intuition, to trust the quiet conversation between light and shadow. I don't think shadows are something to be feared or ignored. I think they're invitations. They ask us to look again, to look closer at ourselves and each other and at the spaces in between. And maybe if we let them, they remind us of how to create without fear, the way we once did. Thanks again for coming.